Hello and welcome to Veterans of the Valley. I'm Tom Turbeville. This is our spotlight on the veterans of the Brazos Valley, young men and young women who gave the best years of their lives to defend our country. All heroes of the Brazos Valley. There is a vast collection of special citizens gathered from time to time at the Veterans of Foreign Wars Post 4692 out on FM 2818, and I would like to welcome their post commander, Rick Oliveras, to Veterans of the Valley. Rick, welcome to our studio.
Thank you very much, Tom. I'm glad to be here.
We're going to talk a lot about the VFW Post, what they do all year long for the youth, for the entire community, and some of your membership out there. But I want to talk a little bit about you and your service. You are a Vietnam vet, although that you are quick to note that you did not serve necessarily on the front lines. Very fascinating story. You were involved in intelligence. Talk a little bit about your service to our country from 1968 to 72.
Well, I went into training through Lackland Air Force Base, and immediately thereafter I went to Denver, Colorado, to Lowry Air Force Base, where I actually was trained in intelligence for about a period of 9 months. It was a top secret requirement to have that, and so consequently it took a while to get into the school. But once I got into the school, we learned so many procedures and things that we needed to use in the field. I specialized primarily in intelligence photo interpretation, as well as a target specialist. That helped me in my future bases that I went to. I was there for, like I said, 9 months in the school, and then after graduation from the school, they shipped me to Davis-Monthan Air Force Base in Tucson, Arizona. There, of course, it was desert type. It was hot, but it was dry. And it reminded me so much of my hometown of Eagle Pass, Texas, because that's exactly the same weather. And so I was comfortable being in that environment. What was interesting about that tour there in Tucson was that that's the mothball base for all kinds of aircraft in the military that are disposed of. And at the time that I was there, back in the early 68, 69 period, we worked with U-2 pilots and a lot of missions that they flew over in Cuba, and missions they flew into the Eastern Bloc countries. And that was an interesting deal because at the time we weren't supposed to talk about where they were flying and so forth.
Right.
Because that's 35 plus years ago. But I got to meet, of all people, Francis Gary Powers one time. And later on he became I think a traffic controller in Los Angeles, and I believe he crashed in his helicopter. But I got to meet him. The assignment was very interesting in that we would actually view some of the film that was taken by the U-2s and interpret the different sites from AAA and artillery to aircraft on the ground and ships maybe that were moving across. And there's so many techniques to apply that field was interesting, and you can tell actually the speed of a ship by the wake it leaves and the angle. Also by the sunlight, you can tell if these petrochemical tanks are full or half empty of oils or whatever materials they have in there. So there's a lot of techniques you have to learn to interpret this. Plus, at the same time, you've got to be trained on aircraft recognition. We had to know all kinds of aircraft, from what the Russians used to their friends, and also we had to recognize a lot of different ships, what if they were SAM-2, SAM-3 sites, and so forth. So there was a lot of training to be done on that. Right after I was in Tucson, I did get sent over to Thailand, to Utapao Base, where I ended up working with the B-52s. I got to meet a lot of good people there. Mm-hmm. That was one of the bases that I really enjoyed, because those guys were something else. That base actually flew missions round the clock. We had cells of 3 going out and coming back constantly 24 hours a day. And we, of course, worked sometimes 12-hour shifts, 7 days straight. Then there was little time for relaxation, maybe 3 days off after we worked 7. But the main thing was that we did a lot of plotting. We did a lot of target specialist plotting. We did a lot of photo interpretation. We did briefings and debriefings of their missions. And there were, of course, missions that I can't talk about that we undertook. during that period of time, and I was there for 1 year. After that, I wanted to re-up and come back to stay in Thailand another year, but they wouldn't let me. They said, no, it says, you've been here 1 year, we're going to send you back stateside. I tried to get all my superiors to write a letter to the commanding general to let me stay and amend my orders, but that didn't work. He said, no, your orders have already been cut, you're ready to be shipped back to the States. Well, as soon as I got back to the States, needless to say, I was shipped to North Carolina Seymour Johnson Air Force Base, again with B-52s, and I decided that that wasn't the place for me. I didn't want to be stateside. I wanted to go serve. So I volunteered for anything that came up, and I volunteered for Guam, was one of the places that they needed a lot of intelligence specialists, and we did a lot of, and I got shipped out there. When I first got to Guam, the base was semi-empty. It wasn't very crowded. But as the missions picked up in late 71, 72, the personnel started arriving. And when I first got there, I was in an NCO barracks. I mean, I had it in like Flint, you know, it was perfect. However, by the time the personnel came in, superior NCOs and officers, they bumped me out of the NCO, the actual barracks, and they put me in an Army tent. And that was miserable, because as you may know, Guam is so humid that you could not sleep at night. Every sheet, every time was constantly damp and wet. We'd have fans, of course, but fans only blew was damp air. So that wasn't a very lively experience. And because we also worked 12-hour shifts, and because the sleeping accommodations weren't up to par, the only reprieve I could find was to maybe go to the movie house, where that was air conditioned. And I would go to the movies, but not to watch the movie, but simply to take a nap in there. After that, if it wasn't there, I would go to the NCO club. That was the only other place that I can recall that was actually air conditioned. And so we would shoot pool and drink a few beers and so forth. But you couldn't do much of that because you were constantly busy and you were on call all the time you were there. If they needed you to come back to the shop to work, you had to be there. So that was the extent of my tour there in Guam. Eventually, they sent me back to Seymour Johnson, and they wanted me to re-up. They were going to pay me a variable re-enlistment bonus because my field was a very critical field at the time. They wanted me to go to language school to Monterey to learn Portuguese of all languages. And they were going to promise to send me to Lisbon, Portugal, to the air attaché office there. Plus, they also said, we'll send you back to A&M and you can finish your degree. I was already a senior at A&M, but I did not want to go back to A&M because they wanted me to major in engineering. And I was already committed to chemistry, which is what I eventually got my degree in, was in biochemistry. So I turned that whole deal down, not because I didn't like the service, because I enjoyed the work I did. It was because I did not want to become an engineer. You know, I just came back to A&M on my own, used my GI Bill, and found a job on campus, and went through the school program and graduated. So that's basically my experience in the service.
You talked about your experience with the B-52s and the U-2 pilots and
Right.
meeting Francis Gary Powers. You told me earlier about an experiment with drones under the wings of C-130s. Pretty
Right.
fascinating. Talk about that.
Yeah, that was another aspect of our photo intelligence. We would actually, these drones, which are nothing like the Predators they've got now, they were bigger and bulkier, and they were launched off of the wings of a C-130 out in the Gulf of Tonkin, and they would launch them into Vietnam, North Vietnam at that, through Hanoi, where it was completely surrounded by AAA and SAM sites. And one of the most interesting things about that was that here's a picture of the camera of the drone taking a picture of a radio tower, and the other side of the radio tower is a MiG-15 starting to shoot at the drone, and this picture caught that action in still motion. And it was so fascinating. But those jets fly so fast, these drones are so small compared and slower that they missed. So this drone eventually was radio commanded by the C-130, and it flew back, took the pictures, and came back out into the Gulf. Once it got back into the Gulf, then they would deploy a helicopter who would use a hook. The drone would open a parachute, and the helicopter would fly with a hook and snatch it. And when it snatched it, they'd bring it back to the ship. They'd take the film out, they'd process it, they'd send it to us, and we would interpret the photos that they had taken. So that was very interesting, but nothing like the Predators that they have nowadays.
Sounds like a scene out of James Bond.
Very, very close to that.
I cannot imagine how highly classified your position must have been, and the security that you must have had to go through to secure a position like you had.
It took almost my 4 years in the service to get my above top secret. The top secret is really the highest security clearance, but there are degrees of it. And mine was what they call SIOP-SE, which is Specially Integrated Operations Plans, Especially Sensitive Information. So there was a lot of information in there that was very well needed and useful, but not only very few people could actually view that and have access to it. So it took almost 4 years that I was into to move to that level.
You were in Thailand, which wasn't the front lines,
Right.
but you were right next door.
Yeah, I was within 25 miles of Cambodia border. Very close indeed.
Did you see any insurgency in Thailand?
I saw what they claimed. They never made it to Utapao while I was there, but they did claim that there were some insurgents coming in Cambodia into Thailand at the time, but they never made it up to the base. Now, when I left, I think I was still in Seymour Johnson Air Force Base. I did hear, or maybe it was a year or two after, where they had gone into Utapao, and because they were repelled back by the Thais. Utapao is no longer an Air Force base. It belongs to the Thai government now.
The responsibility of your job, of the photo interpretation, of looking at the targets, a big responsibility as far as the direction of the war and the health and the livelihood of those who were in direct combat.
That's correct. Yeah, very, very interesting and very helpful. Intelligence, as you well know, has been in the limelight here in recent years, that we don't have good intelligence and so forth. But it's not that we don't have good intelligence, it's we don't have the right intelligence. We need to have human intelligence out in the field, out in the behind the lines. And this other intelligence that I operated with was mainly technological intelligence and interpretation. So it takes a little savvy to be able to interpret the right places and the right sites, if you have it that way. The reason is, if you misinterpret something and somebody doesn't catch it, you could actually cause B-52 or another airplane to go down. It does go through a lot of procedures. As I mentioned once before, I did a combat mission folder that I gave to the radar navigator of a B-52 that was getting in one of the cells that was getting ready to fly into Vietnam, and I had made a mistake in my plotting. I had actually misplotted the PIP point, which is the pre-initial point, and the IP point, which is the initial point before the target, which obviously took him into a different area. But thanks to the radar navigator, he reviewed the charts and found out that there was a mistake there and made the corrections before they actually got to that area. But you know, you never know. You know, you feel bad and you wonder sometimes about some of these B-52 pilots and crew that did not make it back. Because once you got hit by a SAM or something like that, those airplanes just disintegrate. Mm-hmm. And sometimes your conscience bothers you because you don't know whether you had contributed something to that happening. So, I mean, that's the nature of war, but it's still bothersome.
Something that stays with you, certainly. Let's talk about the VFW. VFW 4692, right here in Bryan, out on 2818, and you are the commander. Talk about the responsibility of the commander of the VFW post.
Oh, well, shoot. The commander to me is like the President of the United States, if I may use that analogy. The VFW commander is really the focal point of all programs, all activities that take place, and he is the sole person that is responsible for any action and consequences that may occur in the post. He's sort of the guide, the leader of the post. You have organizations under you, auxiliaries and so forth, that work with you, and sometimes they work by themselves, but with the approval of the commander. So a lot of programs that we do for the community have to be structured in such a way that they flow easily from one week to the next and so forth. That responsibility is it's humongous. I have to write a newsletter once a month. I have to make sure the security system's working so nobody breaks in. If they do, I have to check and find out if they caught them and who they were. And that's besides the programs that we carry on out. We carry programs for the VFW that range from Buddy Poppy orders, which we usually do on Memorial Day weekend coming up. And this generates donations to the Post. And the Buddy Poppies, if people don't know the history behind them, originated back around World War I by a Colonel McRae from Canada, who was in Flanders Fields in Belgium during that war, and he was laying on the ground where he saw the Buddy Poppies growing. And he wrote that poem in Flanders Fields. And it's caught on. And so now the tradition, it was adopted first by before anybody else adopted it, was adopted by the VFW as a memento or a token of the sacrifice that these veterans did. And so consequently what's going on now, we carried on that tradition, and some other organizations are doing the same thing, and we pass these out for donations that the Post doesn't necessarily keep. They go to disabled veterans and orphaned widows, orphaned children of disabled veterans. This money goes out. It doesn't stay, some of it stays in the community, all of the community here. It does not go out of state. So when we do those runs at the convenience stores or at the big supermarkets or HEBs or whatever, we actually are really doing that in the heat of the day sometimes, or be it raining, but we do it religiously on Memorial Day weekend. So we have people that volunteer not only from our post, but also from Boy Scouts. Some of the Boy Scouts come out and help us. And we set them in different locations, and they work all day long. Then they bring the money and we count it. And we had a very successful Buddy Poppy run last year. We hope to do that this year.
Indeed. The local VFW Post, I know you have activities really throughout the year on the special days that are made for veterans, so to speak. July 4th, Veterans Day. You talked about the Buddy Poppy Day on Memorial Day. This is a very active post in Bryan College Station, probably more active than most.
Yes, very much so. There is not a holiday or a traditional event that marks veterans' occasions that we don't participate in. As was mentioned earlier, we actually do the Voice of Democracy, which involves high school kids, and we put them in competition with the Post and then with district level, and they go to regional and maybe national. We do the same thing with the Patriots Pen. We contact all the junior high schools, middle schools, and that involves that level, and that is an essay that is written. They have strict guidelines they have to follow. We also have other competitions that we do. We actually have people that go out and try to recruit members at the malls and by mail or by telephone or whatever to try to retain some of the continuous members that have not paid their dues. Or at the same time, we try to recruit new members. And the aim here is, in my case, is to try to recruit the young members that are serving the armed forces now. The ones that are overseas in Afghanistan and Iraq and that were in Desert Storm. This is the future, though. They are the future of the VFW. As you may well know, there's about 1,000 plus World War II veterans that pass on every month. And at that rate, we're not going to have many veterans left. Eventually, we have to pass the torch on to these younger people. But the challenge there is, how do you retain them once you get them in? What can you offer them? Not necessarily that you can offer them financial this and that and satisfaction, but you can get them involved in projects. Get their families involved, because most of these guys and ladies that come back from the service, they don't want to just go to the VFW and sit in meetings and have a lunch meal or whatever. They want to actually cooperate. And there are so many projects they can do that. They can speak at elementary schools, at high schools. They can do flag etiquette. They can talk about their experiences. They can actually sit with some of the older veterans and find out what they went through. So it's a challenging task to try to accomplish this. There are other things we do. We donate blood to the armed forces, and this goes directly to the troops overseas. We've adopted 2 units in the area. We've adopted the 420th Engineering Brigade and the National Guard. And these guys have been deployed already. What we do is we contact the commanders. We pick up goodies for them, magazines, books, toiletries, things they might need in the field. Phone cards, Operation Uplink, where they can call home. We do this, and they have it shipped out. So we never lose track of that. Plus, we always keep in touch with the commanders of these units in case the family members that are left behind might need some assistance, possibly maybe mowing the lawn or having something moved or whatever. A helping hand. We're there to help them. So we've got that going. We also have a competition right now going. It's called the Air Rifle Team. The Air Rifle Team consists of boys and girls, 7 to 19, that meet at the post at 10 o'clock the 3rd Saturday every month. We provide the air rifles, the pellets, the CO2 cartridges, the goggles, and we have a trained, used to be a Marine sniper, that trains these kids. And it's all free. So anybody in the community that wants to do this can do it. All you have to do is come by at 10 o'clock on the 3rd Saturday, get involved. And eventually when we can build a team, we'll go over and beat the heck out of Conroe, because they were the first ones to have an air show, an air rifle show. So eventually this will grow to the point where it'll be regional in nature and then statewide.
So obviously the VFW is a lot more than just a whole bunch of guys getting together, having a few beers, playing a little bit of pool and exchanging stories. You all are super active, and I don't want to get you in trouble. The Ladies Auxiliary with the VFW, another very active group that's really your big support of you all.
Exactly. We could not function without the Ladies Auxiliary. Ladies Auxiliary, those ladies will prepare foods, they'll prepare meals. We've got an Easter egg hunt coming up on March 17th there at the post. They prepare, they plan for the Christmas parties. They prepare for the meals that we have after our general meetings once a month. And besides that, they help work with us on the Voice of Democracy and Patriots Pen. So they are active, and without them, there is no way we could function. We've also got another auxiliary. It's called the Military Order of the Cooties and the Military Order of the Cooties Auxiliary, which basically consists of what they consider the active workers of the post. It's a privilege to be in that order. And these people actually go out to the nursing homes. They work bingo with them. They take them gifts. They take them food. They spend a few hours with them. And they go to Sheridan. They go to Crestview. They go to different places, local places. And that is always a moving thing they do. They go visit veterans in hospitals. And so that's a good organization, a good auxiliary of the post. So everybody, all the auxiliaries have something to do with the community. And that is really the aim that we shoot for, is we're here to serve this community, College Station and Bryan and the surrounding towns.
We're visiting with Rick Oliveras. He's the commander of the VFW Post 4692. Real quick, Rick, we have just a few minutes. In retirement, you're a Spanish teacher at the Brazos School for Inquiry and Creativity out on Old Hearn Road. Talk a little bit about that school and what you do every day.
Well, I do a lot now. When I started out there, I started working as a part-time instructor, and I was only working from 8 o'clock until 12:30, which was great because that meant some time off in the afternoons. But as a need arose, they asked me if I could teach not only my Spanish classes, which I taught 3 of, but if I could teach biology. And of course, being a biochemist, that's exactly what I did. I said, yeah, I can teach biology. The next thing came up, they said, well, we need a chemistry teacher. Can you teach chemistry? I said, yeah, I can teach chemistry. So here I am doing that. Then they came up and said, we need somebody to teach environmental science. Can you teach that? Yeah, so here I am doing biology, chemistry, environmental science, Spanish, oh, and I forgot mathematics. So I am busy continuously with preparing different lesson plans for these classes. The school is a good place to be because it's kids that need a little individual coaching. We have not a very large campus, and therefore we have a very good ratio of students, teachers to students. and that makes it a lot easier to work with.
I know you're proud to be there.
Yes.
Rick, you're a Vietnam vet. A lot of folks came back from Vietnam. It was not the most popular war. It's still not regarded as the most popular war. As a Vietnam veteran, now as you look at it these many, many years later, I know your pride at serving there is immense. Talk a little bit about your thoughts about being a veteran, an American veteran and a Vietnam veteran.
Well, it's a good point you brought up, because when I first got out of the service in '72, after being overseas from '68 to almost '69, '70, I felt, you know, you'd see all these war protesters and going on and protesting going on in the United States, and that didn't really help the morale of the soldiers and the troops over there. But really, when you came home, that's when you felt not wanted. And not from other veterans that I've talked to, they got spat on and so forth. I didn't get spat on, but I sure had the faces turned away from me a lot of times, and some of them even got labeled as child killers and so forth. And for that reason, I didn't want to join the VFW. In fact, I did not join the VFW for almost 20 years after I got out of the service, because I didn't want to be associated with anything military that would put a stigma in the fact that I was a Vietnam veteran. But eventually, I guess my thoughts and my feelings mellowed after I saw what good things the VFW accomplishes, and the bug bit, so to speak. And ever since I've been with the VFW as a junior commander and a senior vice commander, now to commander, and also junior vice commander for the District 17, the bug's bitten. You know, I want to get involved and I want to do things, because it does make a difference. And I recommend that we get all the people that are coming back from Iraq to come out and join the VFW.
All right. Rick Oliveras, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you very much, Tom.
I want to mention also the VFW post 4692 is one of the gathering spots for our veterans of the Brazos Valley, but also the American Legion post 159. Very large membership for both of these, and they meet, and that's how we bring our veterans to you each week. Thank you again, Rick Oliveras, VFW Post Commander 4692. The Brazos Valley salutes you and all veterans, and please be sure the next chance you get, be sure to go out and thank a vet for all that he has done for us to make us free. Thank a vet today, won't you? For Rick Oliveras, I'm Tom Turbeville. Won't you join us next time? Thank you for watching. This is Veterans of the Valley.